Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 146 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co-host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, we have incoming class changes on Tuesday, slash
Yeah.
Wednesday, slash Thursday, depending on where you are in the world. And Mistweavers are getting some pretty substantial buffs, or so I've been told.
Yeah, buddy.
So we're going to talk about that. We've got more stuff on 10.0.7. We've got raid nerfs, small ones, and some other, just miscellaneous changes. Like they've actually really been on top of the class changes this
Yeah.
expansion. This is way closer. Like back in Shadowlands, everybody was like, "Man, I wish instead of getting a patch." Like a balance patch every like 3 to 6 months, we would get it like every couple of weeks, and we're getting it every couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's tough to keep up, I'll say. But it is awesome to see all this stuff. So
Yeah. Also a note, we had some website issues on Peak past week. And that ended up with Babsalonius or Anomoly, one of you guys, one of
abs.
the red names in Discord, doing a full restore from backup, just like wiping the server, restoring from a backup. And it's working again, working fine. But that does mean the most recent episode of the podcast got taken down, and I didn't realize it. So that will be back up tomorrow. If you are confused as to why to show up tomorrow, that's why.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Site was hanging on some things. So we hopefully fix that.
I don't think we figured out what it was. It's just basically turning it off and on again fixed it. Except in this case,
Yeah.
turning it off and on again meant deleting the world and restoring from a
Rolling
backup.
it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
So
well,
yeah.
cool. Well, yeah, maybe we can jump into progression. I think mine's less as exciting than yours. But yeah, so we are going through our Dathea progression. We had, I think now 4 sub 5% wipes
Ooh.
um, on Thursday. So we extended this week. I think very similar to you guys last week. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
spent both our raid nights on Dathea, or sorry, Diurna. God, their names are too similar.
Yeah, I do the
Broodkeeper.
same thing.
But yeah, spent both nights on Broodkeeper, and yeah, got Broodkeeper very low. And Yeah, it was some rough wipes, we'll say.
Yeah. I
Just in
heard
terms of like, oh sorry.
I heard that one of your tanks was having some connection issues.
Well, that also, yeah, Thursday night because of the great ice storm in Texas, and they do a bang up job in Texas on keeping the power on just in general, and so like
Yeah.
it's
No sarcasm, by
surprising
the
that
way.
yeah, that's surprising that anybody in Texas any problems with their power ever, but
Yeah.
but no,
Yeah.
yeah, Texas was hit with they were in an ice storm for the past like week or for most of the week, and yeah, our tank was having a ton of power issues on Thursday, which it wasn't too bad. Like he'd go offline for like 5-ish minutes, like probably happened like 3 times, but it just like broke up the night enough that like he'd
Yeah.
have a good pull, lose power, and then like have like 1 or 2 pulls where we didn't do as well, get back into the rhythm, and then yeah, he'd lose power again. So, but yeah, so hopefully Diurna dies this week, and then we get to start a Raszageth progression. But yeah, it was a long 2 days of raid, like
Yeah.
lots of egg breaking, lots of like which group is screwing this up type thing. So we did an interesting issue. We have one of our shamans that just would die at the same point every time. And like
Really.
no matter what we would do, in terms of like swapping up cooldowns or swapping up like even like like overall raid CDs used at certain points, we'd sort of always lose the shaman at one point. So that sort of put a little bit of a damper on it.
That's what
But yeah,
Ankh
once
is
you sort
for,
of
right?
well, yeah. Well, the funny thing is like I didn't realize this, but they have a talent where if Ankh is up, they have 8% more HP.
Yeah, it's so
Uh,
dumb. Like they need that
it's so
HP when they
stupid.
don't have Ankh up.
Exactly. So like it was like, oh, Ankh's up, we're okay. And then like if he would die and like use it at a different point, like
And then he would die
we'd
to
be
the
like,
other one because he would.
yeah, the other, yeah, because you didn't have the hit point. So
Was
um,
Astral Shift not enough, or was Astral Shift used elsewhere?
it was used elsewhere. So like
Yeah.
that's what
Okay.
they worked on, sort of like
Yeah.
shifting what like what egg breaks to use it on, and we figured it out eventually. But yeah, it was a learning experience. So yeah, we hopefully get Diurna down this week, and then we get to play with Raszageth for the next week or two, or however long it takes to kill it. So
Yeah. So we got Diurna down last Sunday. It was another
nice.
like 2.5 3 hours into the raid night kind of deal. So we did not get a ton of time on Raszageth last week. I will say though, the work that I did to go back and figure out how the great staff and the egg breaks work
Yeah,
really paid off. We went from like having a bunch of issues where the great staff would like flip around and be in a position we weren't expecting, and in some cases a position that was really not possible to do, um, to having it be very consistently positioned every time. So that was really
oh
nice.
nice.
I have a diagram that I made, and we're not going to go through it, but I put in the work. We have new diagrams. Um, for those that are curious, I talked about this a little bit on the last episode, but the main idea is that there's like a horizontal line between two eggs that are going to get incubated by rapid incubation. And you stand on that as a tank, and she puts her great staff on it, and it's always in range of all three, and it's always exactly positioned because you can't get the like low percent chance of her facing the low percent chance of her facing the rapid incubation line doesn't matter because that's where the tank is facing. So it's always facing the same way. So you just do that and it's the same position every time. And even though it does end up with one of the eggs being a little bit farther away in a lot of cases, um, it makes it the same every time you do the egg set, which just means that they can then learn, hey, I have to, move it like this. Like we had two
Yeah,
hunters, so they really didn't have that many issues with the range. They just always disengage it. Um, But for me, it's like some of them I have to hit Death Advance, and some of them I skip it. Um,
gotcha.
that's actually one of the other things I learned too. I need to not use Death Advance on a lot of them, or if you're monk tanking this, not use roll, not use Tiger's Lust on a lot of them, because what you want to avoid is having the second and third eggs in each set break at exactly the same time.
Yeah, yeah, we ran into that.
And basically, like with our setup was two hunters and a death knight me doing the lines. And with the way that the timing worked out, when the hunters broke their eggs, if I used Death's Advance, I would have the third egg break at the same time. So
Nice.
I stopped using Death's Advance except for there's like two that I absolutely have to use it because of range. But
Uh
those
huh.
are so far away that they get staggered anyway. Because like if I have to use it to even reach it,
Gotcha.
it ends
Yeah.
up staggered. But
Nice.
yeah, we had all of Friday on Raszageth, and actually made really really good progress. I'm really happy with it. We got to the first intermission multiple times.
Oh, cool.
Did not really like blue side did not make very much progress into it. Red side actually like kind of crushed their intermission, um, but blue side did not ever make it past the first set, not once.
Nice.
But that's even like just talking about that. That's like really insane progression for one night. We
Oh yeah.
got the phase down like pretty consistently, fairly quickly. Um, the big thing that we ran into actually is our comp. We were playing two hunters, two priests. We're actually doing two hunters, two priests, and a paladin tonight. There's like a lot of wheelchairs.
Yeah, that's rough.
But we also, because of the Raszageth nerfs, which maybe we'll talk about in a second,
Yeah.
um, it's way more practical for us to skip the fifth Hurricane Wings. If you do
Gotcha.
that, then the hunters don't really need help. They can do their own thing and they'll be fine. Um, the priests, we actually had our priests. They of their own volition swapped to Void Elf. Um,
Nice.
we have three priests on our roster, and because we want to be able to swap people around, our third one is race changing this weekend, and I think the guild is paying for it, or our raid lead is paying for it. One of them is paying for it.
Yeah.
Um, because Void Elf just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. The blinks, yeah.
Um, but one of the fun things there is we as tanks were figuring out how to position the boss so that you had as much space as possible. And there's Dratnos actually did a video series, not just a single video, a
Okay.
video series on the fight, because it's a long fight and there's a lot going on. But in
Yeah.
the phase 1 video, he talks about a method for getting the boss as close to the edge as possible, and it is night and day when you get
That's
that
awesome.
right versus just getting it kind of at the edge.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you pull the boss off at like a 45-degree angle from where you actually want it,
Uh-huh.
and then you run along the edge of the platform, like 1 foot on the platform, 1 foot off the edge, and drag it around, and it ends up with like the center of the boss's model on the edge of the platform.
Oh wow.
It's way, way closer to the edge because the boss has an enormous model. If you just pull it straight on, it's
Yeah.
going to stand way away.
Yeah, it'll be
Um,
yeah.
so I have yet to fall off doing that, but I've come close, and I have died to not hitting enough cooldowns because sometimes the boss will like. There's weird stuff with range when you're doing that, where like I'm
Mhm.
running along and sometimes I like stop for a second to try and death strike, and the boss will auto me but not actually come in range for me to death strike.
Oh no.
And so I've just learned like I just commit like I'm committing AMS. I've got a time dilation. I'm hitting IBF. I'm hitting Vamp Blood,
Yeah, yeah.
and that all combined like I don't need like everything comes back up in time for what I needed next. But I'm committing a ton of stuff there just to make it so I don't have a chance even of hitting Purgatory
Gotcha.
during that move. But yeah,
Nice.
so we're going back in tonight. Feeling good about our progress on it so far. Hoping to like one of the things that was really nice about our raid on Friday is we were really consistent.
Yeah.
We actually, if I pulled up Prog flashbang warning, we have this nice, pretty consistent downward trend on boss
Yeah.
HP. And you can see at the end, these little triangles are intermission pulls. We just had a bunch of them at the end of the night, and that was really, really nice to see. Um,
Gotcha.
if we continue that, it's going to be a really good raid night.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome that you were able to like, yeah, because that's I think that's the biggest thing is like with any end boss fight, right? It's like consistently doing like the mundane phase and then, getting to like the new stuff as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like looking back, way back at Jaina, that was our big problem is we were never consistent in phase 1. So we just
yeah.
throughout all the progression, we're throwing away phase 1 pulls.
Yeah.
Um, and that just takes a lot of time. You just spend a lot
Yeah.
of time on even if your poll is only a minute or two long, you still have a couple of minutes just tacked on there to get everybody rezzed and
As
feasted
well.
and rebuffed and back in position.
Yeah.
And that extra like 2 minutes in between pulls matters a lot more when your pulls are a minute and a half long
Yeah.
than when they're 5 minutes long, 6 minutes long.
Yeah. And then there's the mental drain too of like, particularly if you're not consistent and it's like, 60, 70 pulls in and you're only seeing phase one and you're just like, I can't like
Yeah.
that was the jailer progression for us was like the
Yeah.
phase one wipes to jailer were like very taxing because phase one was also I think it was long for a phase one I think
Yeah,
on an
it
end
was.
boss too, but then also like yeah wiping on like the final set of bombs just like I hate this. This
Yeah.
is so
Raszageth
yeah.
Phase 1 is also about as long as Jailer, but Jailer Phase 1 was so much faster. Like, so much more dense in terms of mechanics, and the line of
Just
sight,
like, yeah, it was just like the
just go,
line
go,
of
go, go,
well,
go.
line of sight's
Um,
still the worst mechanic ever put in a video game.
and
Like
and you had to have the assignment week aura for boss, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually something. So we have currently an assignment week aura for static charges, and I don't know if we're going to continue using it. Um,
gotcha.
it doesn't work 100%. Like it does require either everybody follows the assignment or nobody does.
Yeah.
Um, but the general idea is we've got it set up so that like there's people that are doing their sparks on the left side of the boss, on the right side of the boss, and on the back of the boss. And we just have it set up so that if you're on the left side for sparks, it tries to assign you to go to the left. Right side,
Yeah.
it tries to assign you to go to the right. And it won't do that 100% of the time because of RNG. You can get two people that are on the right side,
Yeah.
and so sometimes somebody has to do a big move across the boss, and it tries to avoid that. But also, we kind of don't need a weak aura if we're set up like that. If people are actually hanging out on the left and right side of the boss, and they do spawn on opposite sides, it's just obvious what to do. You run away from the
Yeah.
boss. The place that the assignment weak aura actually helps is when you do have two people on the same side get it, and then ideally it's like one person gets back and they run away towards the back and don't have to cross the boss. One person
Yeah.
gets right, one person gets left.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll be interested to see if we use anything like that once we start progression. But I mean, I guess maybe yeah. It seems like I mean, good. Did I sorry, I was trying to make a nice segue into the nerfs.
Yeah,
And sort of talk about those a little bit. But the nerfs went in with last week's reset, right? So
yeah,
you
nerfs went in
basically
Tuesday.
started pulling, yeah.
Yeah, we went
So yeah,
in
so
with the nerfs.
yeah, so just I mean they just I guess in terms of like the Raszageth nerfs, right? They nerfed his health, or her health is I don't know
For
Raszageth
health. Yeah,
her health, sorry, by 3% overall. And they also made a couple of changes to some of the mechanics of Mythic. So static charges, which is what you're talking about,
yep,
their damage was reduced by 15%, along with its further
yeah.
reduction by a distance. So like I think yeah, in general, like the precise splitting you need to do now, less important. Probably still important. Probably still does a ton of
It's still
damage, but
important, mostly actually for the people that get the mechanic. Like if two people go to the
yeah,
same side, they won't kill the raid, but they might kill each other,
gotcha.
and
Yeah,
that's a problem. So we still have the assignment aura set up for tonight. I don't like it. May not. It may get turned off for next week. We haven't figured that out yet, but we still have it
mhm,
on for tonight.
gotcha.
Actually, like the amount of damage that you take from them with like running way away is way lower now. Like this
Yeah,
is much more than a 15% nerf to static charges damage. And a lot of these actually are nerfs targeted at phase one. So the next one, volatile spark. The burst cast time is now 4.5 seconds. It was 3.5, which has come into play multiple times when we've had one spark go off at a bad angle and had to, like, I have waddled out there and hit kick, and
oh
that's
my
not a thing
goodness,
that I could do on a 3.5 second cast time.
gotcha.
And also, volatile sparks have 3 stacks instead of 4 stacks on Mythic. So what this is, when you kick, purge, stun, displace, whatever it is, the sparks, they lose a stack, they actually die, and then they spawn a new one with one less stack.
Yeah,
Um, so now they do that 3 times instead of
four, which is
or
nice.
yeah, basically you have to get per person, you have to get 3 stops instead of 4 stops, which does also make that mechanic much easier to get done consistently.
Yeah,
From everything that I've heard, obviously I've only done one version of it. I've only done this version of it. Um, but yeah, it definitely. I think we would have wiped more to volatile spark for sure, if not for this.
gotcha. And I have a question because we were talking about this in Mistweaver chat a couple weeks ago. Are any of you have a monk in your raid, right? At
We
least
have
one,
two.
two. Are they running song? Are either Mistweavers and they running song by any chance or
Um,
GG?
we initially had it, but we actually have just an absolute assload of
Of AO, okay,
AOECC. So I don't know if they are.
yeah.
They probably
Just
can because it does function
yeah.
as like a second ring of peace, right?
Well, and it's a movement one too. So it'll basically it shoots out and goes like sort of across the platform. And anything
Right,
touching it, it'll get interrupted. So
right.
it's yeah, we were talking about maybe that being the play for Raszageth, particularly on Mythic, because like if you get double spawns, it'll of course do what Ring does. It'll interrupt, two
Right.
instead of just the one. And then it also moves across. So if you angle it right, you can hit the majority of like
Right.
a raid or a group. So
So we might look into that. The thing is, we have so ring of peace you can place not on yourself, but we currently have our
yeah,
monks just dropping ring of peace on themselves, and they're in the center. We
yeah,
could put a monk to the side, still have them drop ring of peace in the center with some like put somebody there that doesn't have good AOE stops.
yeah,
And then they could song just across the full length of the boss.
Yeah.
and pick up a bunch like that. But like having two Ring of Pieces, we have Warlocks in. Warlocks are extremely good
Oh
for this.
Jesus, yeah.
Shadow
Yeah.
Fury and Howl of Terror. This is the only time that anybody has ever used Howl of Terror, but it's extremely good for this.
Yeah.
Shaman's really good for this. Thunderstorm has a 30-second cooldown, and you don't care about the knockback. Like, you don't have to talent into
Nice.
the knockup if you don't want it. You might
Yeah.
want it actually for the intermission, but you don't need it for this. And then the double cap totem, actually. It's not up for every set. It's just slightly too long of a cooldown.
Uh,
We did try the cooldown reduction talent. It wasn't consistent. Like, they get
okay.
5 seconds off the CDR for every target it hits. And we tried assigning it to every set because if you hit 2 targets, it's up for every set. But
Gotcha.
it's just like sometimes it would hit nothing because it would get cleared out by other CC.
Yeah. 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 So I mean, you probably have plenty to cover. Yeah, it was just one of those things I was thinking about if you ran like Mistweavers or
Yeah.
I don't know if the other classes get it because it's in the Mistweaver tree.
It's in the Mistweaver tree. It's not something that Brewmaster or Windwalker can pick up, but Brewmaster and Windwalker can pick up Ring of Peace and Leg Sweep with Leg Sweep cooldown reduction and have that up for every set as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, so monks are I guess monks are good at that. Like we're good at that ability or that boss mechanic. So
and actually, Ring of Peace is probably just like the best period. Ring of Frost from mages is like a pretty good second. So if we have 2 mages, two monks in, that's just like 4 AoE denials that these sparks can jump into and just get cleared.
Yeah.
And fun fact, Mass Grip, there's a little server tick thing. Death Grips and other displacements have a chance to move the spark before it actually dies. And if the odds are in your favor and you get the displacement and it actually moves it, Mass Grip is extremely good because you can Mass Grip off the boss if you have a Ring of Peace in the middle, and it'll pull the sparks around it to the middle into the Ring of Peace, and then they have a greater chance of jumping into the Ring of Peace.
Oh, that's cool.
And so that's a really neat interaction. It's not reliable, but when it and also Death Grip or Mass Grip is a 2-minute cooldown, right? You can get it to 90 seconds, but you don't need to because you can't use it. It doesn't get you anything. 2-minute cooldown, so you can't use it on every one, but you can. When it works, you get rid of a lot of sparks very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And there's also in the Visario kind of raid assignment sheet now, there is a macro, and that macro is from instant dollars. It lets you just spam it, and especially if you have a spammable purge, a shaman or a mage, then you can just spam that and just erase ads, just erase these sparks.
That's awesome. Yeah, we have that. We've been messing around with that macro, or like we tested it, I think, on heroic like a couple weeks ago when it first started making its rounds. So
yeah,
yeah,
it works great.
That's awesome. Well, that's good. That's good news. Yeah. I think the only other change where there was 2 heroic changes, I guess you could say, also on Raszageth, was there was a shield reduction, the reduction on the shield by 10% on heroic, and then Baldur's Spark burst cast time went to 6 seconds on heroic. It was 5, so another added a second on it for heroic too. If you're still progressing there. So yeah, this is what the first week of really big, we'll say, nerfs. Raszageth was included in those, along with I think Kurog and Dathea.
Yeah.
So
the one we didn't actually talk about much, the Raszageth health nerf, actually is fairly significant because that makes it much easier to skip the 1st or the 5th Hurricane Wings in phase 1. Yeah. Which increases the requirements on like movement CDs by a lot because it's the strongest one that you get. So being able to skip that's a big deal. And that 3% nerf helps you get there.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I was actually gonna go through Kurog. So
yeah, I was gonna
you
were
on it.
Thing.
So yeah. Go through it. It's all you.
So on Kurog, there's basically 2 changes. There's the passive raid dots both in the intermission and in the main phases. The like storm dominance, fire dominance, frost dominance, those ones from the main phase. the shattering, blistering, chilling, thundering presence from the intermission phases. Those both 8 to 10% nerf. So that's pretty nice. Just like
Yeah.
slightly easier healing checks. And then also all of the ads. I think this is
Every single one.
everything.
Actually, it's both. That's intermission and main set ads.
Yeah, so it's not um the earth ones that get spawned by
Oh,
the
yeah.
mechanic in the earth phase, and it's not the hellions that get spawned from the fire puddles, but all the
Right.
other ones get a 10% health nerf, which is actually really nice for like our raid group was kind of warped by the fact that we needed to be able to do two target cleave effectively. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't warped that badly, but we did make a couple of swaps that we just, had to have the ability to cleave down that second target efficiently. And 10% less HP on those makes that much easier.
Yeah, this would actually screw part of our. I mean, it'd make our shred a little bit easier, but it would mean we'd have to hold damage. So I don't know if you did this when we were doing progression, but in the first intermission, you kill like I think it's the air ad first or the
Yeah.
wind ad first, right? And then you leave then you have the fire ad left in the first intermission. We used to kite it out, so we used to let it enrage and then let it enrage for about 20 to 25 seconds, and then kill it
Yeah.
for timings,
Yeah.
basically going into the earth phase. So less health would sort of screw that up, but I think it'd probably be fine. We just have to stop a little bit earlier on it and
We use
cut
different
it out.
timings, but we did something similar. We after the storm ad died, we didn't use no more cooldowns. Everybody's then from
Yeah,
that point holding cooldowns. And so we ended up killing it pretty consistently around the point that it enraged, and we just like planned on
gotcha.
that.
Gotcha.
Um
Yeah, we would let it enrage and then cut it to the middle. Our monk would touch it so that it cleaved onto the boss because touch goes through
oh,
boss reduction. So we game that in both intermissions.
that's
And
fun.
then yeah, well, because I mean, I think we started doing it after we had a 2% wipe at the enrage.
Yeah.
We're like, we need to pick up like, and we were like, not super clean, but we were like almost fully clean until that point in terms of
Yeah.
our execution. So like, we need to eke out like 2% damage somewhere,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
that's basically like the easiest thing we could think of to
Yeah.
do that.
That
So
makes sense. I don't know that that's quite 2% damage, but the holding definitely like letting people's CDs come back, because that's one of the
yeah,
reasons you do the hold on Kurog is also for healer CDs to come back. Because then you can do the
yeah,
kind of Kel'Thuzad style of like just ripping the same CDs in the same order in every phase.
exactly, yeah. And that's basically what we did too. Like the same, almost to the letter, the same ticks where we used the same CDs across the board.
Yeah.
I think we adjusted it slightly because Earth has like the scary tank damage, so we made sure we had rallies for like the second set of ads that spawn. But yeah,
Yeah.
I guess not too much. No, don't take up too much time talking about Kurog. But in any event, the nerfs, yeah, are good in terms of like ad health and then just general damage. The major damage components are
Yeah.
done. So
And then the last of the nerfs of the raid, Dathea ate some. Static
mhm.
Discharge, which is the dot that the raid gets on Mythic when you clear your mark. That got reduced by 15%. What this really does is make mistakes less punishing. This doesn't actually mean that you consistently add another stack. Um,
Yeah,
but it does make accidentally adding another stack maybe recoverable, or at least less likely to like absolutely murder people.
right.
Uh, and then the volatile infuser health. I believe this applies both to the ad that's on the main platform and the ad that's on the upstairs platforms. They have the same name but different, like they're different NPCs as far as the game is
Mhm.
concerned. So I'm not entirely sure that this applies to both, but I think it does. 10% reduced health. Uh,
Yeah,
the one on the main platform, we are
it's
already like
awful.
stopping DPS on. The one
I
on the upstairs platform though, that's a good way to make that platform just a little bit easier. And
Yeah, it
this,
gets you down before the winds, which I think was what at least what we were wiping to a lot of times was like not killing that upstairs ad in time, and then the team from upstairs coming down as a winds hit. So there was like a bunch of damage that group was taking
yeah,
as they landed. So
yeah, we were using we were having that same overlap happen, and we were just sending like on the first one. I think on the first one we didn't send anything. Second one was health stones. Like
gotcha.
you would
Yeah,
just like jam your health stones for that blowback so that when you landed, you did not immediately get murdered by Cyclone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But these are again solid. We'll say solid nerfs, and I think I think we'll start to see more of those. I mean, the Raszageth ones are pretty significant, and I think it's just
Yeah.
I think they're doing it for a couple of reasons, and I think we'll talk about maybe one of those coming up here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the Raszageth nerfs are pretty solid in terms of cleaning up phase one, and I think we should expect to see like similar tweaks and nerfs. I think across the raid, probably to like the second half bosses, like you know it's funny, Diurna. I mean, I guess, as we talked about this, we might not see anything for Diurna,
Yeah.
in terms of like its nerfs, but Dathea and Kurog got their first set. So
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
waiting for the Sinarth nerfs, by the way. Like those are the ones.
I
That's what,
think
that's what I want to say.
I think when we get back on farm, we're going to absolutely crush Sinarth. Like the damage checks on
Yeah,
Sinarth, I think it gets absolutely crushed into the dirt. And we were already like kind of there. Like the medium spider damage checks were not that significant
yeah,
anymore, but like I think we're gonna get there. It's just gonna we're gonna wipe because of people falling off, right?
yeah.
We're not gonna wipe
Exactly.
because of the spider living too long. The spider is going to get absolutely deleted.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, cool. Maybe we can switch gears a little bit. We'll start talking about things that happened this week. And then we'll get into sort of the main topic you talked about, which is like tons of changes, nerfs, all that fun stuff. So, this week, there was a ton of downtime. So if you tried to play the
Yeah,
game at all during the day, probably Tuesday, Wednesday, or even Thursday, a little bit difficult. And the reason being is the trading post went live this week.
no bugs,
Um
no bugs, only downtime.
ugh, yeah. So
Not
trading
true, by
post
the
went
way.
live. Yeah, there was tons of bugs. And yeah, so if you guys aren't familiar, trading post is the new sort of just activity. You call it like an activity system, right? It's like essentially a monthly system where you can log in, do activities, gain a currency, and then use that currency to buy like mounts, cosmetics, pets, all non-power increasing things, just like fun things that you can do things out in the world and gain points, and then like use those points or use that currency to buy things. So February 1st, first week it's coming up, and yeah, I mean, so it's supposed to be a monthly activity. Like there was a bunch of posts about how to min max this, which is just such a wow thing to me. It's like
Yeah, it is.
like I'm like, you have 20, in this case 28 days to do this, right, in February. And like I did it in 2 days by not trying. Like I was just like
Yeah,
doing stuff in the world and like hit it in 2 days. But I'm like, people are just like, oh, you got to do like this on your main character, then you do the same thing on your alt, and it's like the most efficient way to get like your 100 things or whatever. Because I think it's
yeah,
it's it's account wide, so it's
yeah. It
like
is.
I'm like, guys, like just
the
it's okay.
The only
Like
thing I have to say about that is really that there were a lot of bugs initially with it not counting things, and
yeah,
that makes you have less time. Like if you lose a raid week's worth of progress on the things, then that kind of sucks because the raid a lot.
yeah,
That gives you probably a quarter of it. Like 1 week of raiding gives you a
yeah.
quarter of the progress you need. So if you literally just raid log and you do the raid every week, you actually are gonna like more or less get it done. And you add in any other content, you get it done in time to actually go to the vendor and buy something.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's the system went live, and I'll say it's super. I actually like it.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was interesting, like because so basically the way that works is there's a bunch of things that give you these trader tenders currency, and it's almost anything from like killing raid bosses, killing old raid bosses too. Like it's
that
just
does count, and I
uh,
believe that's intentional. Yeah,
yeah. So it's like going back and clearing old content. It's like doing things in the world. Like there's one for the rock climbing world quest where if you help 10 other players, you get points for it. Like that's one of the achievement
I
things.
didn't even know that you
Yeah.
could help other players with it.
Yeah, there's like a upgrade you get that you can give other players grip
Oh, okay.
if you target
I've
them.
been saving all my resources to like buy mounts and things.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I full sent it into like the upgrade tree at the thing. But yeah, so there's like it's a bunch of different just like open world stuff plus like rating stuff. I think there's even PvP things in it.
Yeah,
And so like it's literally
PvP dungeons. There's one
by
for
playing the
dungeon
game.
bosses
Oh,
that
really?
um every boss in the Mythic Plus key counts. Like if you go and you do Halls of Valor, you
Yeah.
get, 5 bosses on that.
Oh,
Even if
nice.
it's normally like Mythic Plus is like in this weird not dungeon state where like you don't get dungeon credit for most things, but it does count for this.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and there's even stuff for like emoting at certain characters. Like
Yeah.
I had a there was one to like emote at all the dragons and like I think or emote at raid boss dragons, and one of my buddies went to there's one for Malagos in Eye of Eternity, and he forgot to emote, but then killed Malagos, and you can't emote at the end of the Malagos encounter because the body just disappears. So
Oops.
like you can't do
It,
that this week.
it's against that one next week.
Yeah, exactly, which I thought was funny. So, but no, it's a super cool system, and then you can use this currency that you get to like buy, like we said, like transmog stuff, pets, mounts.
There,
Um,
there is a very so there's two things I want to highlight. One is
yeah,
it has one of the only flails in the game. This is very similar to the Protection Paladin flail. Um,
yep,
different color, different model, but same animations. So this is one of the only ones in the game that is usable by not paladin, not protection warrior. Like, so this is like, I mean, I'm getting this to use on my right,
yeah,
like dual wielding flails. That's pretty neat.
that's
Um,
super cool.
and then I just think there's a very cool symmetry. The Celestial Steed, the very first store mount ever that came out in Wrath of the Lich
Was
King back in 2000, 8 or whatever. Um, very first mount available in the trading post.
yeah, which is funny because I never bought this mount.
I don't
I
have
know.
it either. I'm not buying it now either because I'm not going to use it. But
Oh, I bought it because I
yeah,
don't know. I had a bunch of points, um, but I didn't really. I forgot that it was the first
it was the
like
first store
real
mount.
money mount. Yeah, yeah,
That's
storm
why
out.
you see it became a little bit of an in joke. And so now the quests in Hillsbrad Foothills, there's the like blood elf character
Oh
that
yeah,
rides up on the celestial charger.
yeah. For that quest. That's
Yep.
funny. That's awesome. Yeah, and then you also get a so if you do so basically the way that you fill up the bar basically anything by doing all these different activities, and if you fill that up, I think you need 1,000 points for it. You get another mount
Yeah.
from it, which is I think it's a brand new one. I don't think I've seen this one before. But it's called the Ashadar Harbinger of Dawn mount, and it's a cat mount with like cool armor.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
it's one of the night elf racial mounts, but with like warden armor on it.
Yeah. So it's cool. I mean, I so just in general, like I said, I completed it in 2 days just by generally doing my typical Tuesday stuff and a couple things on Wednesday specifically to get it. Like I loved all the dragons at the top of the Dragonflight Tower. So Alexstrasza, Caligos, who else is up there? Somebody else is up there. In any event, got some points for doing that, and some other just like doing world quests and bosses and stuff like that. So
So
no, I think if you're oh sorry.
one thing to keep in mind with this, so the amount of tender that you get the first month is higher. Um, you get 500 from having a Dragonflight license on your account. So if you don't already have that and you go and buy it, whenever that happens, you'll get 500.
Yep.
You get 500 for doing the just like introducing the traveler's log thing, um, and then there's 500 for having a subscription that you get for free just by like logging in and going to the box,
Yep.
um, and then 500 for doing activities. Catch is most of us have 2,000 from this month because Dragonflight license doing the first time quest, 500 from activities, 500 from having a subscription.
Yep.
Next month we're gonna get 1,000.
Yeah.
So you can buy a lot this month. I would encourage you to maybe not spend it all in one place.
Oh, I 100% spent all mine. But that's not a problem, Emerson, because you can save one item for next month. So
That's true.
in the UI at the bottom, you are able to save one of the currently sold items for next month to purchase it next if you want.
Which is a really cool system
That's actually
that
really
they
cool.
should bring and apply to the Great Vault.
We've talked about this. Yes, I agree. I agree that it should be something like within the Great Vault, being able to freeze like one item, basically for next week, as long as you meet like the requirements, right? So like freeze it, and then like if it's a Mythic Plus thing, you have to at least do one Mythic Plus at that same level, and you get to
Yeah,
keep it, right?
yeah.
But no, yeah. Any event, a trading post or trade, yeah, trade is trading post what it's called. Um, super cool system. Good addition. Even though it offers me nothing to get better at raids, I think it's just a cool thing to keep people engaged in the game.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm a huge fan of it. So next up, or other thing they added, and they did this
Quietly. Yeah.
low key, no posts. It actually went up on Wowhead first, and I'll tell you that somebody in my guild linked it before, like an hour before Wowhead had a post on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Same.
but they added the ability to bind on pickup primal chaos items that you can send to your alt. So
Buy that
basically,
account. Buy that account.
oh, bind on account. Sorry, bind on account. Thank you, thank you. So yeah, so you can basically purchase an item for 80 primal chaos, and you can send it to an alt, and your alt gets 60. So there's a little bit of a conversion. You pay 20 chaos, but it is, covers probably one of the biggest gripes, I'll say, that people have had, is like farming primal chaos on an alt is super unfun and super annoying.
The crafted gear
Really,
is like
oh,
really
sorry.
great for catching your alt up. Like if you make a new alt, you hit level 70, you get your 5 sparks and you can't use any of them because you don't have
Yep.
any primal chaos. In order to get
Yep.
primal chaos, you have to do, group content, but you can't get into group content because you're eye level fuck all.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's a nice to alleviate that portion of it. I think, and I think it's really a good step. People did, of course, use this time to complain about the upgrade items. So like the items that drop out of heroic content and the items that drop off of mythic content, not being able to even increase your item level of your crafted gear to, heroic and mythic levels. I mean, I think this is a good first step. I think the other items, there is a case to be made that they're dropping from content you're doing, right? Not they
Yeah,
shouldn't be things that should be able to spread around. You get them as rewards for doing content, whereas like Primal Chaos is sort of a currency that you get rewarded for just playing the game, which is something
right.
you could probably trade a little bit
It's
easier. So
it's you can get 392 gear without that
yeah,
stuff, right?
it's
392
still good.
gear, like 5 pieces of 392 gear is a lot to just like throw
Yeah,
on a new character. And you can fill out the rest with the 340 something crafted gear and just be like immediately eye level 3.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, this is a very good change, I'll say. And again, something that they didn't make a big deal out of, which is funny. Like, I feel like I'm not used to this Blizzard, I'll say, in
Yeah,
terms of like them just like doing something or them like announcing they're gonna do something where like there's no buildup of like players. Like I think certain definitely people are starting to get a little annoyed with this, right? But there
right.
wasn't that like crescendo of like every forum post or every time anybody says anything, it's like make these things tradable, right?
Uh,
We
I
hadn't
th-
gotten to feel like that level.
I think that most people haven't reached a level where you really can take advantage of this fully. Because you
Yeah.
do need primal chaos still on your main. You need it for the cauldrons. You need it to make your own crafted gear on your main. Um, but there were a few people, like the people that played a ton in my guild, the people that were really like pushing keys and stuff, had thousands and thousands and thousands of primal chaos because you get so many
Yeah.
from doing keys in particular. You get, if you do a 20, you get like 20, you get 18, very high. Um,
Yeah.
so they just like were rolling in the stuff. Um, I split my time between two characters and didn't do as many higher keys, right? I have like 500 on my main, 500 on my monk.
Yeah.
Um, and so I am shipping some to my hunter. Like I shipped some to my hunter and made myself a bow of the dragon hunters, um,
Nice.
which I was actually able to make on my monk. So that was kind of cool. Like being able to use the crafting order system to make myself items. I can't make anything else for it because I don't have any point in the male side of the tree,
Yeah.
which is a little bit annoying. But you know, being able to like craft my own gear, that's pretty neat. And this actually lets me do it for my alt.
It's awesome. That is awesome. That's super cool. Yeah. No, yeah, it's this sort of change I think is super, like I said, it's a really nice one, and one that Blizzard like didn't make a big deal about. Like that, yeah, like I said, their blue post came out after most of the community, like at least WoW had knew about it, which
Right.
then most of the community did from there. So no, good change. A couple other quick little hot fixes before we get into some of the bigger things. They did find a bug in the difficulty of Battle for Azeroth dungeons, basically making them scale beyond their intended difficulty. The only reason I bring this up is that the BFA dungeons are, I think, the base dungeons they drop you into
Yeah.
after
If you
you
have a
finish the.
if you have a new account, you go through the new starting experience,
Yep.
Exile's Reach, and then you go into the BFA campaign,
Yeah.
and that unlocks the BFA dungeons. And the BFA dungeons were destroying people.
Yeah, so imagine being level 11, level 12 and getting dropped into like or whatever level you come out of Exile's Reach.
Yeah,
I think it's that low. Yeah, dropped into these BFA dungeons that were already kind of somewhat difficult, right? Anyway,
they're much
but
more
then also
mechanically complex than a lot of the old starter dungeons.
exactly. Yeah, they don't ease you into the game anymore. But on top of that, the scaling was sort of a little skewed high. So like, yeah, people were yeah, it was a little bit too difficult. So Blizzard made a change there, fixed some of the scaling issues, and yeah, hopefully those dungeons are not as punishing for the brand new people as they come in.
Yeah.
So um cool. And then one final thing before we get into like major or specific things is there was a new PTR build or sorry, not a new PTR build plus PTR came up. So the
Yes.
10.0.7 PTR is now up. You can log in. I don't think you can copy characters yet. It wasn't working end of the week. I don't know if they fixed it before it. I haven't checked, over the weekend. Um but there was a new PTR build pushed. You can log in, and there's a ton of updates. I'll say at least for Mistweaver, the majority of them were literally just like tooltip clarifications, like
Yeah.
standardizing. Like instead of writing out the word yards, it's YDS. Instead of having like 40.0%, it's just 40%.
Yeah.
But there was one interesting change, which I think people might be excited about is that they made a change to one of our Shaylun's gift choice nodes. So the one choice node we have is what we call lessons, which after you use Shaylun's gift, you get a buff. The other choice node was that it increased the spawn rate of clouds. So Shaylun's gift was powered up sooner, basically in half the time. And along with that, now there's also a cast time reduction included. So you cut a half a
Uh,
second off of Shaylun's gift cast time. There was a couple of other things data mined, some uncategorized spells that are right around this whole veil thing that offer both the cast time reduction plus it adding two targets to its Shaylin Gift's cleave, which makes it hit 5 people instead of 3 like it does now. Which is a huge Mythic Plus upgrade, we'll say.
yep.
Not as much in Raid, but huge in Mythic Plus. So 10 out of 7 looking pretty good for Shaylun's gift, we'll say, if these go live. But
Yeah.
a couple of data mine things there. Well, those were some of the big ones. And I don't know if Brewmaster got I know I saw something for Brewmaster, but I don't know if that's a
That's
just a
a
tooltip update like that was already
it's
in.
actually so at the point that this data mining was done, there was actually a bug on live that we still didn't have our magic stagger.
Oh, okay.
We have our magic stagger buff now. Like it's funny, the magic stagger buff from 35% to 45% went live prior to 10.0.5. Then 10.0.5 came out and took it away.
Nice. So just adding it back.
So they're just adding it back. So we had it for like a week and then it went away. Um,
Nice.
so they added it back this week, and the data mining is just comparing to the current live version. So at the time that this data mining happened, the live version
Gotcha.
didn't have it, but the 10.0.7 branch did have it. So
Gotcha.
now everything has it. So
That's good.
you got your magic stagger buff again.
Nice. 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 Um so yeah, so there was 10 out of 7 looking pretty good. Some additional, we'll say, Mistweaver changes. That was the only major one. The rest of it is all tooltip updates from what we can tell.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, more 10 out of 7. Really I think it's a bunch of class changes right now, and they haven't opened the new story area, which is
Yep.
we get to go to the I forget what it's called, the evoker starting area.
Forbidden
In
Reach.
this Forbidden Reach, yep. So we'll see how that goes.
There is. Did you see the data mining on the new like gems?
I did not
Primordial.
know.
Oh, primordial gems.
So
Yeah.
there's oh, okay, okay.
So people were a little bit freaking out because it looks a lot like Shards of Domination,
Okay.
but it doesn't come out with a raid patch. Part of 10.0.7, from what we can tell, there've been no blue posts about it. So let me see if I can find it. But it looks like it's probably supposed to be more like benthic gear. where like you go and
Okay.
you do the new stuff in Forbidden Reach, and that gives you, you know, basically like a special ring that you can put these special gems in that have different effects that are similar in a lot of cases to like the benthic gear effects.
Okay.
So I think it's supposed to be that, not supposed to be anything for like raiders, but maybe, you know, for brewmaster you put on the one that does damage.
Gotcha.
Just like maybe that's your like third best ring behind the Cobalt Assembly one and the Aeronog ring for damage. And if you don't have the Aeronog one, you just like throw it.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Like
Oh yeah,
find
I
the
did.
post. But
And I did hear, I saw a post from Tally, I think, or like a tweet from Tally on this that was basically like, don't worry about so that now it makes sense of what it's about, because his tweet essentially was like, don't worry about this. I got every gem in like 2 hours,
yeah.
and they only work in the Forbidden Reach, I think is what it
Okay,
said.
yeah,
Don't
here we
quote
go.
me
I
on
found
that,
it.
but
I found
yeah.
it. So this is the data mining from the new Primordial Stone Gem system in 10.0.5. No communication on these. There is an Onyx Anolet that you get that has 3 sockets that is a ring, and in those sockets you can put these different primordial gems, and there's a bunch of different ones. I am not going to go through them all, especially since it does seem like it's primarily world content. um like there's stuff like there's one fire damage from your primordial stone gems is increased by 60% and is now considered chaos damage. And then there's one that does fire damage, and there's one that does dealing damage, can infect a target with a plague that spreads to other enemies. Like a bunch of these, being near a corpse grants the effects of blood, frost, and plague primordial stones. Like there's a bunch of different ones in here, and it seems like it's primarily just like a neat little world content thing for 10.0.7. So
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it seems like, yeah, from what, at least from the tweet I saw, I didn't see this post, but from the tweet I saw, it seemed like it wasn't a raid, or even like it wasn't like a like an instance PvE thing, right?
yeah.
It was more of like an outdoor content thing.
And
So
there's no stats on the ring right now, but it has been confirmed that you can only put uh, the primordial gems in it. So you don't
okay,
just like get a ring. You don't go there and put regular gems in it and then, you know,
yeah,
run around with that.
gotcha. Well, that's good. That's good. Um, Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, try stuff, Blizzard. Like, throw it out there, see if it works. I mean, I guess it's a cool little thing. I think what they're trying to do too is, if you think about it, like with the trading post and even something like that, it's like, and then of course the interview with Preach where Holly said this directly, the EP of Warcraft, is like they're trying to create more things for people outside of just raiding and Mythic Plus or
Yeah,
PvP, right? Like there's a third faction of people, I think, that, don't get talked about a ton, and like I think this is a little bit for them. So
yeah. I mean, this is new world content for people that
uh,
are not, like you said, are not in that like instance group content bucket.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. Cool. Well, yeah. So maybe we'll shift a little bit to the main topic, because there's a couple of, I think, 10 out of 7 stuff, super cool. That's, I think we said like maybe, what did we say, like end of February, early March timeframe is what we're thinking. But there is a couple things coming out in the next couple of weeks, which I want to get to. And so,
Yeah,
um, the first being a couple of February 14th things. We'll maybe handle these together.
yeah. We get a
Um,
Day gift from Blizzard.
yeah, Valentine's Day gift, and it is Crossrealm Mythic open. So Crossrealm Mythic for Vault of the Incarnates opens on February 14th with that reset. So if you have your horde, your alliance, or friends want to get together, kill Mythic bosses, you can on the 14th. It's interesting that they're not tying this to Hall of Fame filling,
Yep.
um, which is which I think is good. I think it just means that they're on a schedule now, right? Like
Hall
they
of
have to.
Fame, by the way, still broken. The Hall of Fame
Oh,
page
really?
on Blizzard's site. If you go there, it says there's like 39. I got baited by
Yeah.
this. They broke it with 10.0.5. There have been zero new additions since 10.0.5
Okay.
went
Gotcha.
live. Um, so right now, if I go and I pull up the um, progress kills on Warcraft logs for Horde, I'm pretty sure we're gonna be looking at like 70 something.
Okay. So it's getting close. It might actually hit it right around the same time it normally would.
Right.
Well, no, because they required, I guess not anymore, but they required 100 Horde and 100 Alliance
Yeah.
guilds, right?
So there are currently 88 Horde guilds that have cleared Vault of the Incarnates. Somebody actually like this morning, finishing up progression on
Nice.
Raszageth. Um, so there's only 12 slots left effectively in the Horde Hall of Fame before it gets to like it will close in the next reset, announcement.
Yeah,
Assuming they actually fix the Hall of Fame page and any of it works.
that's true. Um, but yeah, so I mean they are enabling it, I think, on a timer now. I think a lot of this stuff is we're gonna start to see with them releasing their sort of roadmap for the year.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff's gonna be on a timer.
Yeah.
Um,
This is exactly 2 months, by the way, since raid
yeah,
release.
which is a good. I mean, I feel like it's a good time to do it. And then
Honestly,
the other
I still
what?
I still feel like they could just have it cross realm from the start.
I still think, if from my point of view, I still think they are hesitant to do that primarily because of the race for world first implications. And so the fact that like you end up with like a bunch of like, because you can, no matter what they say, there's a lot of things that they're trying to do to reduce essentially the degeneracy that becomes a part of the race
Right.
for world first, right?
But
And so like I think in that regard, there will always be like they will always try and limit it, at least for now, until there's just full on cross realm guilds, right? Because at that point they
yeah,
really or cross faction guilds,
but
sorry.
like you can't get anything from cross realm. It's not like you could already do cross realm heroic for splits and things like that. You're
Yeah,
not really doing mythic splits. We've not ever seen that really.
that's
Um,
true. That's true.
I guess we kind of saw that a little bit in Sepulcher because of how long it went on some of the early
Yeah.
bosses. But even then, they could just realm transfer characters. You know,
Yeah. Realm in fact. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I mean maybe it should be opened up to start. I don't know. I think they still want to try and preserve the nature of a guild in the game, which
yeah,
sort of this somewhat kills, but in any event, Cross Realm February 14th going live. And then along with this, also second, which is probably what more people are excited about, is February 14th. Both the Conquest and Valor caps are removed, so you can farm those currencies to your heart's content. Starting starting on February 14th.
yep.
So
10 days from now,
um,
about 9 days.
yeah,
You can do math.
So yeah, so I mean, I think this is probably a little bit overdue. I'd
Yeah,
say
it,
this one I would agree with you in that like this seems like something they do like after the first month, right? Or even I mean, completely honest with you, like once like there's a world first kill of a boss, like just remove the cap because this is like
I don't. So
a direct power increase thing.
with the eye level you can get from Mythic Plus, I actually don't agree because if you just grind keys, you completely outgear Mythic or completely outgear
That's true.
Heroic and early Mythic. Like you get full 415s.
That's true.
Like it's a lot of time. Like let's be 100% clear, it is a lot of time to do that. But capping it for the duration of like our progression is actually kind of nice. Like we'll
Yeah.
have uncapped Valor for like a couple of weeks of our progression.
Yeah. If
And
that, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, what it's in 2 weeks, so you could be almost done in 2 weeks. So you'd have it for like your
yeah,
final week of Prog. Yeah.
Raszageth is like a 4 or 5 or 6 week boss for a lot of guilds, so we'll see.
Okay.
But with the nerfs, actually, I don't know that that's necessarily still true because a lot of guilds progression was phase 1,
Yeah.
and they
Gated phase one.
definitely
Yeah.
definitely made phase 1 easier.
Yeah. Um, but no, I guess you're right. Having it uncapped, it just makes Mythic Plus the more efficient use of your time, right?
Yeah,
Because not only can you'll get better, more than likely better itemized gear, and then that gear will be of the same or even higher item level than what you might have out of your heroic and mythic clears anyway. So
yeah,
um yeah, no, you're right. I think, yeah, I guess holding this one back makes sense. I still feel bad about and maybe I don't feel bad about the conquest cap. But yeah, so for the remainder of season one, after the 14th, uncapped, the assumption is the caps come back in season two. At
yeah,
least for the opening like month or two. So
yeah. I
um
think that if they did uncap them from basically the start or from like a couple of weeks in, I think that they would nerf the amount of or like the eye level that you could reach, which
yeah,
I would rather have the cap and be able to like bump an item up rather than not have the cap and every item just is now worse.
exactly. No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the cap is definitely, I think, a good thing versus a like general item level reduction where you can upgrade. So, um, but yeah, so those are the two, I guess the two things coming February 14th. So happy Valentine's Day, Crossfield Mythic, and Valor and Conquest Uncapped. Um, so cool. So now I think into the big updates, and something I'm super excited about. So Blizzard came out with a post that a couple, actually, there's two things I want to talk about. Number one, there was actually a very substantial fix that went in this week, to Mistweaver, and then also there's a bunch of stuff coming next week with resets to Mistweaver. So the fix first is, they fixed an issue with Lessons of Anger, um, where it was not duplicating some damage and healing sources. So Lessons of Anger is one of the buffs you can get if you take Lessons of Xiao, which is whenever you cast Shaylun's Gift. Depending on how many clouds you have, you get a stack, or you get a duration of a random buff, and there's 4 buffs. One of those was called Lessons of Anger, and what Lessons of Anger did is that it sort of duplicated some of the healing or damage you did while it was active to another player in your group or raid. So essentially, if you got Lessons of Anger on, say, Raszageth shields, and also had cooldowns running like Chi-Ji or something else, you could solo heal a Mythic shield, actually, because the duplication's out of control, because it's every healing. So it's leech on yourself, it's, healing you do randomly throughout the raid, it's all your hot
Yeah.
sticking, like everything gets, I think it's like 25 or something like that percent duplication. So um, absolutely massive. And what happened was, once I guess it was a week or two ago, we found out that it wasn't duplicating like non-direct casted healing. So
Oh,
like
so none of your
Leech
like
wasn't doing
HOTS.
it, yeah, like HOTS and things like that. So that was changed with the February 2nd hot fixes. So Lessons of Anger back on the menu. So it's very good if you like high rolling. I mean, it's definitely a rogue, like roll the bones type situations where like if you get anger going into a huge amount of damage, you will do a huge amount of healing. So
Right.
like don't plan on that, I'll say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you could high roll that, it was awesome. Um, so that's in there. They also did. Most people didn't realize this, but I think about a week ago too. The only reason I bring this up, we had a couple of questions in Mistweaver chat about this. Is they fixed the double Feline Stomp issue, which is where if you had 2 monks in your raid that would each cast Feline Stomp, one would overwrite the other
Oh,
if they were close to each other.
yeah.
And so they did a fix about 2 weeks ago. I think it was the 27th of January, like whatever that the end of that week was, that fixed that issue. So now you should no longer have Feline Stomp issues with your
That's fun.
other monks. Yeah, our Windwalker and I we're always fighting about that. Say, um, but cool. So those are some of the fixes, and then randomly this week I'll say which I guess we shouldn't say random anymore because the Blizzard's been pretty on top of this. Is we got a huge post with a bunch of class changes. So like I want to focus mostly on the Mistweaver ones plus some of the other healer ones, which I think is
Yeah.
interesting. But in general, a bunch of classes are getting changes, right? Which is, you know, something I think that in general we've always asked for. We talked about this. I mean, I remember talking about this like mid Shadowlands with you and just being like, it would be awesome if we just got changes every once, even if like it was just numbers like changes or just something. Like it just sucks knowing for like the next 6 weeks nothing's gonna happen
Yeah.
with
Absolutely.
your class, right?
Yeah.
Or to be fair, the flip side of that is like I'm overpowered and broken right now. So for the next 6 weeks, I will continue to be overpowered and broken, and I happen to like hit the lottery with like picking my class the right way.
Yeah.
Um, but no. So the Mystery change is pretty significant. So I'll just read them off sort of quickly as we talk through this. So number one, all healing increased by 3%. So this is just an aura buff, 3% more healing on everything, which is awesome. They're also buffing Vivify healing by 5%. This is on top of the Vivify buffs they did a couple weeks ago. And this affects all Vivify healing from what we've seen. So it's not just the main heal, it's also on any of
Also
the
the
cleaved
cleave. Yeah.
targets.
Okay.
So that's again, and on top of the 3% healing that Vivify will also receive from the aura. Pretty solid buff to Vivify healing, we'll say. They also are increasing healing and decreasing mana cost reduction offered by Cloud of Focus to 20%. So it's a 20% buff to your enveloping mist, healing, and vivify, along with a 20% mana reduction. This stacks up to 3 within clouded focus. So this is definitely more of a, I don't PvP, but this is definitely more of a PvP focus change, I'd say, or at least if it was in my mind. Clouded focus competes with ancient teachings, the choice node between the two. So if you do any sort of PvE content, you're more than likely not taking it. I don't know if monks take it in PvP, but
Right.
I mean, in any event, they're buffing clouded focus, um, which is good. Peaceful Mending, which is right before it's right around the Shalen's Gift, lower right hand side of the tree, which is basically whenever you are soothing mists or channeling soothing mists. I'm sorry, on a target, that target receives increased healing from enveloping mist and renewing mist on the target. So this is a soothing mist up, sort of buff. It's not again a PVE style thing, but if you're use soothing mist, particularly in PvP, or if you play a build where Soothing Mist is something you cast a lot, here's a buff to the targets that you're soothing. They're enveloping and renewing mist, so solid increase there. And then here we get some stupid stuff. So spinning
Okay.
crane kick damage is increased by 15%.
Does this feed
Uh,
into the spinning crane kick meme build?
yes, which is just oh god. So this is an ancient I think it's ancient. It's one of the awakened Phalanx or ancient corns. I always forget between the two because you always take all those Phalanx upgrades if you're
Right.
going this build. But
Right.
yeah, I mean this just makes like anytime there's more than 3 targets now, I think this puts it at like 3 or more targets in range, you will just literally spam spinning crane kick and do tons of damage, tons of healing. So it's like 3 or 4 now. So definitely a huge buff to damage there, which is just awesome. Particularly, I mean, in raid, not as useful. Like other than Primal Council, there's not a ton of bosses that have consistent like 3 or 4 targets in range that you're hitting
Right.
all the time. Um, People have tried to make it work on Kurog, but there's just not enough like time with multiple mobs around the boss, right? I know
Yeah,
that
I could
boss have
have.
the ad, but it's only 2, so
Yeah, you could maybe stack the ads on the boss in the intermission and just take advantage of
yeah.
there being a third target, even though you can't really damage it effectively.
Yeah, but even then, it probably
Yeah,
still isn't worth it for like the even positioning and other people in the
like you
like
can't really do
just for
that
the
in
mod.
the fire lightning intermission. You gotta do
Yeah,
that. Like you could do it in the earth frost one, but
yeah, it's not that part. It's not really worth it. So Council and Raid is probably the only one this is, but this is a huge Mythic Plus buff, right? So anytime you're
yeah,
pulling multiple mobs, you'll do a ton more damage and solid healing. Ancient Concordance also got a buff. It increases the chance for Rising Sun Kick to reset by 5% and 10%. Was 3 and 6, so this is a good reset chance increase. And then Lessons of Doubt increases healing and damage by up to 40%, which was 35. And Doubt was, I always get Doubt wrong in terms of the lessons. So I'm going to look it up real quick because we're
okay,
talking. I'm going to slowly try and stall for time. But the lessons update, more healing from the lessons piece. And lessons was, oh yeah, you're, they do more healing based on the target's current health. So the lower health they are, the more healing it will. It used to be up to 35%. Now it's up to 40%. So
gotcha.
low
So
health
just
people receive, a little bit more healing, we'll say, when
yeah,
you're healing them. And it's dynamic too. So like it would work on, renewing mist hots that are ticking would increase as the target's health gets lower, which is good. So
nice.
um, cool. Take a break because that's a fair amount of changes on Mistweaver. And I mean,
Right.
all in all, it's just a nice buff to Mistweaver healing, right? Like I think in general, people say that Mistweavers are probably in terms of HPS third right now in the raid. Behind like Evokers are just absolutely broken,
Yeah,
and Druids are crushing
just
it, which they haven't crushed a while in raid. So it's
I
good to see them
mean,
up there too. So
druids were insane in season 3 Shadowlands in
oh, that's
raid.
true. That's true. But nobody ran druids because it was all just priests and paladins. So
Yeah,
but if you had a
so
druid, you'd have one there. So but no, yeah. So yeah, tons of I think monk changes. But just in general, tons of so all good things, I guess. To wrap it up, all good things. It doesn't I don't think it makes Mistweaver the best healer in the game. I don't think we'll touch Evoker still, even with
yeah,
their slight nerf. But it definitely makes Mistweaver, I think, a solid choice. Like I don't think you're hurting. A lot of people say like you're hurting a raid by bringing Mistweaver, whatever that may be. I think at this point, like you can play Mistweaver in almost anything and be, at the top or topping your meters if you care about that as a healer. So
yeah.
um
And that comes, like you mentioned, another like a bunch of healer tuning across the board. Like holy priests got an aura buff of 3%. Shamans
mhm.
got buffs of 10% to Healing Surge, Chain Heal, Healing Wave, Healing Rain, and I don't know what Overflowing Shores is. I'm assuming it's a talent related to Rip.
Yep.
Um, and uh, Evoker, like you said, 5% healing reduction. Restoration
Yep.
Druid, 3% healing reduction. Um, so there's a bunch of healer changes, not enough to like break the meta, but enough to kind of close the gap a bit.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I will say this is the most, people were sort of talking about this or memeing on this on Twitter, but it's like the most healer changes we've gotten, like between major patches ever, and even in some cases, like I think over the course of Shadowlands, this is more changes just through this point of Dragonflight than all of Shadowlands came.
Yeah,
In terms of like healer, like just you know adjustments and things like that. So it's good that they're focusing on this. I will say that like I feel I actually don't feel about this, but it's funny that they're not touching disc, right? Which is an interesting one because they've been sort of in limbo for a large portion of or for most of Dragonflight, right?
yeah. They did get disc
But
buffs. We got disc buffs like last week.
Yeah, that's true. But they're yeah, minor, we'll say minor at best. Type of adjustment. So
Yeah,
no, I think the point that I wanted to sort of make here is that like they're like Blizzard seems to be much more willing to make changes. Particularly for I mean healers in general, I'm always happy with like just mix it up, like change things, all that fun stuff. But just even across the board, there's changes to like, I think you mentioned even before we started, like the blood buffs came in,
yeah,
right? Which are really good. Like Guardian Druid's got a ton of uh changes, right? I don't know if they're make Guardian Druids good or not, but
yeah.
I don't know anything about tanks, but like there's a ton of changes in the notes to Guardian. So
So like
uh,
Blood DK got a bunch of nerfs. These are primarily AoE damage buffs.
mhm.
And most of it also increases things that you can use to actually establish threat before things are, which is a problem that Blood DK has. A lot of its AoE damage comes from things hitting you.
Gotcha.
Shattering Bone, when you get hit, when a Bone Shield charge gets consumed, it does damage to things around you. But if you're not getting hit, you're not doing any of that damage, and it's like one of the highest damage sources you're going to have in an AoE setting.
Hmm.
So there's buffs to Heart Strike, Blood Plague, Blood Boil, Death and Decay, Shattering Bone itself, and then the damage buff that you get while you're in Death and Decay. So there's like a lot of AoE. I think primarily actually targeted at threat, not actually at like damage numbers. There,
Gotcha.
like it does increase damage, that's for sure. But these are all like going to make it just a little bit easier to get threat in a Mythic Plus setting in particular. You're going to be able to, and like on Raszageth, like we're going to hit the intermission, right? And I'm going to be able to put stuff like put down my Death and Decay and hit a couple Blood Boils, and that's just like I'm going to be less likely to lose threat on one of the mages to mages. Um, Things like that. They also there's some buffs to Guardian Druid, like you said. They got primarily defensive buffs: armor from Ironfur, armor from Ironfur talents, absorb shields from their Ursoc's Fury talent, which is like the talent version of Ursoc's Fury Remembered from Shadowlands, the legendary.
Hmm.
Frenzied Regeneration cooldown reduction got buffed. Uh, Even more buffs to Ironfur, like they really buffed. Um, they buffed their new Lunar Beam talent, which they also I think fixed that this week. Maybe that was last week. They fixed it to no longer heal enemies, so no,
That's good.
it's good.
Good.
Um, I, they got a fix this week that went live. Tooth and Claw, one of the talents that Guardian Druid has that's supposed to grant 15% magic damage reduction, was not granting any.
Oh, geez.
So
Okay.
they
Well, that's
fixed
not good.
that. That now grants 15% magic damage reduction as it is supposed to.
Nice. Nice.
So that's a pretty big fix for them. And then there's no Brewmaster changes, but Protection Paladin damage buffs across the board. I mean, it's Avenger Shield, and then your Blessed Hammer talent, and then Hammer of Wrath all got buffed. And so they are the overarching kind of story of all of these buffs that we're getting and nerfs that we're getting is we're getting like a light touch on the overperformance.
Hmm.
Um, and we're getting pretty significant like we are buffing things on the underperforming specs. Like if it's not a meta spec, like expect a buff. I think
Yeah.
is currently kind of the message we're getting, which is great. Like this is like it makes it feel less bad to be on a spec that's underperforming because you know they're like sending things out and like none of these are gonna break it. Like they're none of these are gonna like completely upend, you know, your specs viability. Although we have gotten stuff like the Celestial Brew change for Brewmasters that
Hmm.
is really close to that. Just as an individual change, that did a lot. Um, and some of the talent changes for Mistweaver also were very significant. Like all the stuff with like the spinning crane kick build now, lessons of anger on the storm surge intermission.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of stuff like that that is really good and just like targeting the underperforming specs and like disc priest. Disc priest is kind of in a weird place where it's like still very valuable, but obviously not as powerful as
Right.
something like a preservation evoker. Preservation evoker is just like the best thing in the game.
Which is, yeah, which sucks, I'll say. But no, I mean, I think in general, this is what I think we've wanted from Blizzard for a while in terms of like just like changing the game, like just doing any sort of changes to the game, right? Because I think there are things within the community where like we realize like, hey, these specs are not as good as other specs, right?
Yeah.
And so like I can look at, 9 dot, like actually even before this, like if we look at like Legion launch stuff, right? And like the fact that like Mistweaver was an awful class for Legion launch. I
Yeah.
will fight anyone who
Yeah,
wants
it
to talk
was.
about like how bad the class was. Just bad. It was unfun to play. And it was also not powerful. So it wasn't like it was powerful and unfun to play. It was just unfun to play, also not as powerful. And so like this is, we're starting to see this. And like from my point of view, I wonder if Blizzard's ability to do this is because the classes are in general much simpler. And when I say much simpler, in that like when you buff or nerf something within a class, it's all contained within that class. You don't have to care
Yeah.
about another system interacting with it,
you
right?
you don't have covenant abilities and soulbinds propping things up. You don't have like the Nia soulbinds propping things up or the Dreamweaver soulbind, the haste circle that you get from that, not
Yep.
propping up anybody's damage. You don't have like look at a mage spec and go, wow, we need to nerf that, and go, well, we can't nerf Dreamweaver, which is a significant chunk of their power, because doing that also nerfs these, 7 other specs that rely on it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's that, and then yeah, it's the whole idea of like how do you change Bone Dust Brew in the Covenant system to be better for Mistweaver, but not overpowered or out of control for Windwalker or Brewmaster,
Turns
right?
out
And
the answer
so
is you're moving from.
that's true. That is actually exactly true. So I mean, I wonder if it's number one. Like, I wonder if that has a component of the just Blizzard's ability to more clearly say, okay, if I make these changes, they're contained within the class. They're not going to impact other systems. I don't have to think about other systems as we do
Yeah,
this, right? Um, I think that's probably one component of it, and then I think it's probably just the idea of like if you want like you don't always have to release new like cinematic story experiences or raids to like be new content, right? To keep people engaged, right? You can
yeah,
do these sort of like mix up with classes in the between those big moments and people will still play, right? I think that's going through like Shadowlands and everything like that. It always felt like Blizzard was like, okay, here's like my massive story content, raid content that we're going to place down. And that's going to be why people like flock to the game, right?
yeah,
And then we need to be ready sooner with the next one. So like once we drop that, it's forget about that. That's out. The game is the game. And then we're gonna focus on the next big like massive like zone story raid, whatever it ends up
yeah,
being, right? We're gonna drop that in. And it seems like a little bit of a mentality shift here where they're starting to like do like be more, I guess, like I don't know if discipline's my third word, but maybe I don't want to say they're putting more planning into it because I also don't think that's the case. I think they're doing less planning. But like the idea of is like they have these smaller things they've got that sort of will keep people engaged. And then along with those smaller things, they can say, okay, we have a team that can tweak classes, right?
yeah,
Um, and so no, it's been a lot of fun. It's been, I'll say, like also more annoying, just from a Discord perspective of like people being like, okay, is this good now, or is Mistweaver good now, or like, and I'm like, well, we're never bad. Number
Anomoly,
one.
is the caster build good now? Is Cast
Oh my
Weaver good
god,
now? Is the one true way to play Mistweaver now to stand in the back and channel
kill
Soothing
me.
Mist?
Oh my god, it's just ugh. I don't even mind those questions if people were smart about like asking them, because like you can stand in melee and do that, and I wouldn't care. It's not caster Mistweaver. It's not a thing. Like you can't hit anything from range, Emallson. Like light
Mm.
sweep is melee. Like all your actual damage abilities, which don't even matter. Like
How are you gonna spinning cream kick the mobs from
you're
40
not.
yards away? Yeah.
You're not. You're literally gonna be AFK in the back, channeling soothing mist on someone who doesn't need it, and you're an idiot.
Sitting in
Sorry,
the
that was
back,
rude.
channeling soothing mist on the tank, spamming them with Vivifies, 99% over healing.
God, and then getting range mechanics because you're at range when you could just stand in melee and AFK and do the exact same thing in
Yeah.
any event. God. Yeah, I think somebody asked that literally 20 minutes ago. By the way. um, but no, I mean it's really cool from my point of view to see Blizzard start to do that and be consistent. Like I think we've always like we've sort of talked about this multiple times, and that like if they just made more frequent changes or more updates, it'd be good or bad, right? Because I think it's funny. I don't know if it was an interview, one of Preach's interviews, or if it was an interview I read with was listening to with like I think it was an interview with like Greg Street Ghostcrawler. He was doing like on some Riot stuff, not WoW related, but where he was like, yeah, in some cases we just buff or nerf things because like of the community perception. He's like, it doesn't actually change the balance, but it's like we'll just put this in. I think he was talking about League of Legends, where they're like, they'll just make this change, and it's like just because the community thinks it's overpowered, it's like we don't think we don't think the hero's overpowered. Like we don't think this is going to materially change the meta, but we'll put it in the game, and like it'll make a slight adjustment, and maybe things will change. And I think even if some of that is like what Blizzard's doing, right? It's where it's
Yeah.
like just hey, just to put something in patch notes so that the community thinks we're talking about this, like the hunter thing, right? Like
Yeah.
increasing hunter damage just because the
Oh,
community's
that
upset
one
about the
is
bow, right? Where like it
well,
might not make a huge difference, but
they just need to nerf the bow, man. They just
that's
gotta
true
nerf the
too.
bow.
That's
They
true.
could buff all hunters by 10%, nerf the bow, and it would be like
Yeah, the
make
same.
make the bow like on par with the Aranog ring, which is already a super good item. It's just not like defining whether you get to play on the final boss or not.
That's true. That is true. Um, but no, I think from my point of view, it's good to see a lot of changes, right? Just to sort of keep people on their toes. And I mean, to be fair, I think it's on the flip side, like making the community realize Blizzard's thinking about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
They might not nerf or buff or make the changes you want for your class, but they're making changes to classes. And so like, which is a huge departure from Shadowlands, which was like, unless it was PvP and unless it was a broken bug, you saw nothing between the
Yeah.
05 and like next like dot release patch, right?
Yeah,
So
it does make it so much easier to be like, I'm gonna just keep playing my class because if it's not good, it's gonna get buffed, and if the buffs aren't enough, they'll buff it again. Like
yeah,
we have somebody that's played Resto Shaman for us this tier, and Resto Shaman has not been in the greatest place. But you know what? Resto Shaman is now on its like third round of buffs, and
yeah,
I mean they're gonna keep going. One of these days they'll make it good.
exactly. Exactly. That's funny. Yeah. So I mean it's all in all, I'm always happy for Mistweaver buffs, right? I'm always happy for like classes getting better. Um and I'm always happy that the outliers sort of get brought down. Like I think the 5% on preservation, like talking to a couple of preservation invokers, some in my guild and just some that sort of play the class, it's actually not that big of a deal, we'll say.
Yeah,
Like in the grand scheme of things, I don't like even if no other class got buffed and they only received a 5% nerf, they're still probably the best healer in the game right
yeah.
now.
I
But
mean,
it's something, right? It's like a minor chip at that armor.
they
So
did in 10.0.5 they made some talent changes and some spell changes to make their ramps less ridiculous. I don't
yeah.
know if they were successful, but they were trying.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's uh it's good to see this, right? It's good to see that they're like
Yeah.
taking a look at this stuff and trying to just adjusting the game. Like the game doesn't play the same, right? So it's cool that like from Mistweaver they brought in Shaylin's gift in a '05 patch, right? Like not even like a major patch, and
Yeah.
that is like that has brought in so much more build diversity, both in terms of Mythic Plus and Raid.
Yeah.
And like you can play the builds we started with, which are perfectly fine, but then you can go the Shayloon's gift build, which is like a roll the bones type thing. It's slightly more difficult to play, I'd say. I mean, well, yeah, slightly more difficult to play. There's a little bit more nuance in how you get the same amount of healing out of it, but
Right.
it's viable. And when you hit that fear on a big damage event, like you are coasting, you are
Yeah.
doing some healing.
Yeah.
So it's it has that sort of fun to it.
Yeah. I do wonder a little bit if like they like ripped out a bunch of the core of the game, right, in order to build the new talent system. I wonder if that has given them some courage to be like, yeah, we're gonna just like we've already like ripped the game apart and put it back together. We can just like new spell, whatever. We can do that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean too, like the other thing I think about is because they probably work on these talent trees for a while. I bet you there's a ton of stuff on the cutting room floor. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, we can just bring
true.
that back easy. Like it's like, hey, we didn't think this would work in the original iteration, but like a bunch of feedback we got from the players. Now we're like, let's just drop that in there and try it. You know
Or
what I
like
mean?
they put out their talent build and they're like, they had to make a choice. You can't have every talent in the
Yeah.
tree, and they had to make a choice, and they weren't sure on the choice, and they're like, you know what? Okay, I made the choice. Maybe it was the wrong one. We're gonna switch things around and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is yeah, which from my perspective, I think is like, yeah, again, just super cool. And I think you're right. I think too the reception the community is given to the talent trees, I think is probably given them like yeah, a little bit of confidence just to sort of make changes like this in the middle. And I think at the same point, I'm also thinking, I'm not thinking, but I also believe too, like leadership over there also has given some of the design folks a little bit more leeway of saying like, hey, we have enough people here that if this change doesn't work, we'll just revert, we'll go back, right?
Yeah,
We're less concerned about like making that mistake. We're less concerned about getting this perfect every time we put it out.
yeah,
And like the bigger concern should
that's
be
for
like
sure.
adjustments in the middle, right?
There have been so
Yeah.
many broken deploys.
Yeah. Yeah. Which people get upset about in like downtime. But like the other thing too is like when WoW, like a lot of people will say that like classic or like, the earlier expansions were where WoW was at its peak, right? Where you think about like, I mean, classic in general is always the best example because like there would be days the game would be down, right?
Yeah,
And like I remember distinctly like getting like a week's worth of game time one time. The game was down for like 2 straight days or something ridiculous.
yeah,
And so like for me, like the downtime sucks, right? And if you play this game a lot, it's awful because you lose like half a day's worth of doing it. But um I think if I have to take like Trading Post coming out and the game being down for like 16 hours over 2 days versus like Shadowlands where we got zero changes or new stuff for 6 months, like I'm
yeah,
fine with,
yeah.
game being
I'm
down
willing to
for a
pay the
day or two.
price. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely like if I had to choose, I would choose the bugs. Like, and reiterate, Shadowlands was also buggy. We
Yeah.
just got used to the bugs because they stuck around, right?
Yeah.
Like stuff like the Weapons of Order bug for Brewmaster, where you had two different monks in your raid and they both hit Weapons of Order. Well, that sucks. One of you
Yeah.
gets the benefit. um,
Exactly.
so just stuff like that like stuck around the whole expansion.
Yeah. I mean the haste bug for Mistweaver is on Fallen Order, where like if you went above a certain haste percentage, they just stopped casting things they were supposed to be casting.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, no, it's
Uh,
yeah, it's definitely like stuff like that that never got fixed. It's yeah, those are almost game breaking, which is like, yeah, the trading post didn't work for 2 days, but it seemed like they've gotten most of it figured out. Like I haven't heard a bunch of people being upset about it so far. So and I
yeah.
think in general, I mean, I was super high on Dragonflight, and I think s- even if they didn't make Mistweaver updates this week, I think the same thing I would have said was like I'm super high on like just them continuing to make changes and
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah on the outlook of the game. So no, it's been fun. Diurna, not so much fun
I
right
had fun
now
on that boss.
because I can't
You
kill
should
it.
try tanking it.
No, I will never tank in another raid. I'm also like, I'm about to go DPS. I'm getting upset
Oh
about this healing
boy.
thing. No,
Oh, there's a story
but no,
there,
I
but
think the game in general is awesome.
that story might have to wait for next week because we are
Yeah,
right about out of time, and I think we both got stuff that we got to get done this
no, that's
afternoon.
true. I didn't realize the time. I've done too much time talking about the buffs. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we are out of time, unfortunately.
Um, but yeah, I games coming along. I'm this is so much better. Like
Yeah,
just thinking about this versus Castle Now, this is night and day.
yeah. Oh
But
yeah, 100%.
that is going to be it for the show of the week. this week, if I can speak. Thank you all for watching and or listening. If you enjoy this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over at the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. Got questions about the nuances of Shaylun's gift, figuring out when and where you can spin to win. Go and ask Anomoly in the Mistweaver channel.
Of course.
Please ping him directly. He really likes that.
Love super might not respond, but you can
Yeah,
do that
he
for sure.
loves it. Loves it. Anyway, that's going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.